University of Guelph student Alexandra Musser has been hunting for housing for 6 months.
It was so rare to have somebody get back to me, and when they did, it was, sorry, we don't have space for you. Sorry, we don't think you're a good match. Sorry, we're out of your budget. And just getting denied over and over and over again was so stressful and so painful.
There's so much competition, she didn't have much choice, finally settling for this. One room of a house shared with 6 other students. She's paying a hefty $840 a month.
Absolutely disgusting. This water doesn't actually run at all. You can see all the browning and water damage. This is around the entire baseboard of the house. It smells really bad too.
Why did you feel like you had to sign a lease in a place like this?
Because there was no other options. This was my last resort. It was either this or couch surfing for the next year.
Guelph is a university town with some of the steepest rents in the country. The average cost of a 1-bedroom apartment is up 27% in a year. But that's not unique. From Victoria to Calgary, Kingston to Halifax, prices have soared, pushing student housing further out of reach.
So what's going on here? We all know there's a housing shortage. There aren't enough affordable apartment units being built, and landlords are raising rents to cover higher mortgage costs. But add a wave of college and university students all needing somewhere to live into these communities across the country, and you've got yourself a perfect storm.
Particularly here.
We tracked down Mike Moffat, an economist who studies housing issues.
How would you describe the shortage of student rental housing?
It's an absolute crisis. Colleges and universities across Canada, particularly in Southern Ontario, have been increasing their enrollments substantially. But the incentives for them are to bring in as many students as possible. International students pay international tuition, so they tend to be a very profitable group.
And are schools required to kind of build adequate housing?
There's no requirement whatsoever. It's up to them to be sort of responsible, look at what the housing situation is in the community, and keep enrollments at a manageable level.
Here in Waterloo, Ontario, there is some on-campus housing for international students, but for many, it's just too pricey. Rahish Jaria moved here from India about 5 months ago. He came to study web development at Conestoga College.
It was very good news for me. I was very excited to start my new life in here. It's nice, actually.
With nowhere to live, that initial joy quickly turned to despair.
So many students are looking for accommodation, but they are unable to find because of expensive prices.
And what's your budget?
Between $550 and $650.
So these are all out of your price range?
Yeah.
Some of the options within his budget were a tight squeeze.
When I visited the place, it was like 3 people already living in the room, and they want me to fit in there.
And they were all paying $650?
Yeah.
For one room?
Yeah.
Wow.
Others were downright disgusting.
Some of places had bed bugs, and you can literally see insects flying through the, kitchen sink.
How do you feel about the search right now?
Very frustrated, actually. I'm very worried. I don't have a sad face, but I am worried inside.
Do you wish that you had known more about it before you came?
Yeah, I wish I had known very much. They never told us the ground realities, you won't be able to find an accommodation, what will you do? And
why did you want to talk about this today?
Because someone should. Everyone is just ignoring the things, and they have fear of speaking to the public, actually.
The schools we talked to say they're well aware of the issue, and they're trying to find ways to address housing needs. But students say they desperately need help, and they need help now.
The schools need to look at the enrollment side, but also start to have some supply themselves.
Moffat agrees it's great to welcome more students, but the housing supply has to keep pace.
It's a big, hairy, complicated problem, and it's going to require a lot of coordination and working together.
Who do you think should be taking responsibility for this?
It's really hard when nobody of a higher power is willing to step in and say, hey, these students are suffering, what can we do to help?
So for the next year, Musser will live here, likely working 2 jobs just to pay the rent. Hoping by the time she has to sign her next lease, things will be different.
Nisha, as this problem persists, the number of new students to Canada is still growing.
Ian, we even hit a record last year. More than 500,000 international students flocked to Canada. That's up 75% from just 5 years ago. But housing doesn't seem to be a factor that's directly considered in the planning. And while it's provincial governments that are responsible for regulating schools, it's the federal government that issues the student visas. So a bit of a disconnect, a bit of a muddled mess for an issue that's also spilling over to the broader housing market. Ian, those students who have few options end up competing with other renters, families, even home buyers. And that pushes up prices for everyone.
Thanks, Nisha.
You're welcome.